Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Fantasy 420, where today we're going to be taking it to the baseball diamond and discussing some Week 2 fantasy baseball priority ads. Today we're going to be discussing 2 infielders, 2 outfielders, 2 utility players who I have defined as a player having a position in the field and also an outfielder, so they can cover a lot of prime spots for you. And also 2 starting pitchers that have 2 starts for Week 2. So all players also must be 50% or less owned according to yahoo.com. So other thing I wanted to mention before we get a quick start on these names is I only have 2 starting pitchers because I did feature a lot in my Week 1 waiver vid, and I also did a special midweek edition with tons of relevant priority fantasy options, and all of those names should be added before you add the guys I do today. I just don't have time to go over everybody I mentioned, and it would be good for you to watch the video if you didn't and you were curious. Those players will be over 50% owned, but if they still are in your league, then you need to grab them. Names like Zach Eflin, Matt Shoemaker, Freddie Peralta, a few more names. So I will link those at the end of the video, and I highly recommend you watch them. And without further ado, let's start with our 2 infielders. The first infielder I'm going to mention, and might be the highest priority on this list, is Yandy Diaz. He's a first and third baseman playing for the Tampa Bay Rays, and he's around 27% owned. He's a 27-year-old young player who was acquired from the Indians in the offseason. He's going to bat 1 through 5 in the surprise team of Week 1 being the Tampa Bay Devil Rays. Maybe the Tampa Bay Devil Rays are going to be better than we thought this year. I expected them to be a bottom-dwelling team, especially that offense, and we could expect these young players, if Yandy comes around, a couple more of those guys. I'm not going to overreact like some people are and say they're going to win the division. I'm still predicting the Yankees, but they did without a doubt have a good Week 1, and they're looking better than we thought. They have Blake Snell, who's a stud. So back to Diaz, the team does like him, so he's going to play. He has 3 home runs in his first 33 at-bats after only 1 in his first 88 of his career. So he has a sure role on a team and may have figured it out with another year in the majors and a new team with a new start. So I would add him. He's knocking the cover off the ball right now, and he's looking really good. The next infielder we're going to mention is Dansby Swanson. He's a shortstop for the Atlanta Braves, and he's around 29% owned. He's another 25-year-old young player. He's also a former first-round top prospect. He had 2 underwhelming seasons while getting played in over 100 games in each 2017 and 2018. He's starting out hot, just like Diaz. He has 3 home runs in the early part of the Week 1 season. He has also a walk-off hit, and he's already been moved up from 8th to 6th in the order on a young Braves team who I mentioned a lot in the preseason. So if he figured it out as well, there's a ton of talent to look back on being the top prospect. And if you need a shortstop, he's looking like a good ad right now. Moving on, we're going to talk about a couple outfielders. The first being Clint Frazier. He plays for the Yankees, and he's around 15% owned. Once again, another young player, 24 years old, former first-round pick from the Indians, who they traded to the Yankees for Andrew Miller. Hasn't really gotten an opportunity yet in that star-studded Yankees outfield, but with Aaron Hicks, who still has yet to even hit, and Giancarlo Stanton on the injured list, he's been called up and playing, and he has been mashing. He has 3 home runs in 2 games. If you look at the YouTube videos, they're pretty exciting moonshot home runs. He's going to be hard to predict This isn't really a year-long ad, uh, especially the playing time. But for this week, he's definitely an ad. And with Stanton out, and depending how long Hicks is unavailable, or if something else were to happen in the outfield, I think he has really high upside if he can somehow stay in the lineup. They might not even move him back down if he's just mashing the cover off the ball either. Young guy, and they would want to play him somewhere. So I would definitely keep an eye on him. He's a really exciting player to watch. Next name we're going to talk about is Kevin Kiermaier. Probably destroyed that name. Outfielder for Tampa Bay. He's only 12% owned. This was a tough decision between him and Hunter Renfroe, batting cleanup in San Diego, but he's just a part-time player right now, so a little harder to trust him. Kiermaier, on the other hand, he's gotten a hit in 7 of 9 games. He's got 2 stolen bases in the last 4, and he's known for having a little pop and a little bit of speed. He's hit 6th also in the last 3 games, moving up from 8th in the lineup, so that's good. And if he can stay healthy and produce, I have a feeling he'll be given chance just like Yandy is given with that Tampa Bay Devil Rays lineup. They really like his speed, and they're going to find a way to put him in the order. So that's a name I would look for, especially if you want some stolen bases. Finally, we're going to move on to a couple utility players. Like I said, these are players who are in the outfield but also have a position in the infield, so they can provide a variety of spots for you. The first being Brandon Belt, first base and outfielder for San Francisco, and he's 21% owned. He started the season 1 for 11, and since then he's 7 of 24 with 3 home runs. He's a guaranteed veteran role piece for that rebuilding Giants team. I kind of mentioned they're doing like a half young guys, half veterans to sort of bring the young guys around. They can't really move away from those guys as they were part of their previous 3 World Series. They can't move on yet from those veterans, so they're just going to have them lead the young guys for a couple years. So as long as he can stay healthy, he's going to hit 2 through 5 in that order, and he has plenty of home run pops. So I'd look for Belt for a sure spot in that lineup as long as he can stay healthy. Next, moving on to is Jay Bruce, another first base and outfielder. He is playing for the Seattle Mariners this year, and he's 30% owned. Once again, started out really slow, 0 for 11, and since then he's 6 of 23 with 5 home runs. He's also hitting cleanup in Seattle. He's being around forever, and people just want to move on from him, leave him for dead, but he found himself possibly the best role in the offseason on a team that needs a cleanup hitter in Seattle. And while he is a little bit one-dimensional, if you're doing a categories league instead of a points-based league where home runs can get you a lot of points, it's a pretty good dimension to have. And if you have a lot of players who can bring your average, he can get on a real streak and win you home runs or get you close to someone else. So he's also worth an ad. Finally, I'm still sick, you guys, but there's 2 starting pitchers, 2 of them that I'd like to mention. So once again, I just want to say, please look at my starting pitcher videos. I'm going to link at the end here because those guys should be added first. But the first name we'll mention today, Jordan Zimmerman, starting pitcher for the Detroit Tigers at around 22%. He's never been a strikeout guy or even really stayed healthy, but he does have talent and a great start so far. He's allowed 1 run in his first 14 innings, and he has that anemic Cleveland offense without Lindor yet and Minnesota, so I wouldn't really stake the claim yet for season long, but he would be intriguing beyond week 2 if he can still come out and perform past then. And finally, the last name we'll look to mention is Marco Gonzalez, starting pitcher for Seattle and around 41% owned. He was Seattle's opening day starter, and they had to part ways with longtime opening day starter Felix Hernandez, and that brought about a little bit of a quarrel, but obviously they needed to move on, and Marco Gonzalez was their choice, and that should give him a lot of confidence. He has 3 wins and 3 starts. And he has KC in a struggling start offensively for Houston. Also, not really a huge K guy, but he's only 27 years old, so he could improve there. Thanks, guys, for listening. I'm about to cough, so I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thanks. Bye.